What's up, and welcome back to the Going Rounds podcast with me, Big E. I'm back for episode number 2. Today, I want to start off with just giving thanks to everybody who has shown support for me with this podcast. Something new I'm doing, and it's just great to see that everybody's liking what they see. They may not be into fights, and you may not be into all the stuff I talk about, but I appreciate all the support. So I just want to shout out to everybody out there that is subscribed to the page, all the social media pages. I got an Instagram and a Facebook going so far. Got more stuff on the way, but as far as all the support goes, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you all so much, and keep it coming, guys. And I'll keep the content coming. I'll try to make it better. I'll try to get better with everything that I got coming from this point on. So thanks again, guys. Today, I'm going to be going over a couple of different fight organizations because this week, unlike most weeks, the UFC does not have an event. They're taking this week off because next week, they will have an event in Paris. So I assume that they're, laying low this week so that they can get everything going in Paris. It'll be the first time in Paris for them. So I will give a short little preview of that later. First of all, we're going to start off with One Championship. Now, a lot of people don't know a lot about this organization, at least here in the US, especially if you're not a fight fan. This organization is really big outside of the US. Internationally, they're bigger than the UFC for sure. So it's something that a lot of people here don't follow. And, it's okay. If you're not a huge fight fan, you're not going to find this organization something that's going to interest you because the UFC is the mainstream organization. And it's the one that's all over everywhere, all over social media. It's the biggest organization here in the US, and it's the one that everybody shows interest in. I mean, for the most part, a lot of people say, you fight UFC and don't even say you fight in MMA, which is the actual sport. So, and a lot of people don't know. That's okay. They just know what they see out there, and it's not a big deal. The UFC has come a long way. They've earned their spot with what they've done and what they're doing. So it's big here. It's bigger internationally too. There's fights all over the world, Australia, China. There's been fights everywhere, London, everywhere. So they're big outside of the US too. But for cornering the international market, One Championship is definitely the organization that is the biggest right now. And if you don't know about it, I'm going to give a quick little rundown of what they got going on over in that organization. So that way, if, you're interested at all, you can take a look. They have fights going on this weekend. It'll be streaming on Amazon. It'll be the first time that they're on Amazon. So it should be a pretty good card, it's looking like, with a few exceptions now that I just learned about, but we'll go over that in a few. The first thing I wanted to do was just give, a little breakdown of what, the differences and the, things that are alike with the UFC when it comes to One Championship. They are about the same when it comes to weight classes. There's a little breakdown for you on the weight classes. There's a lot of similarities there. One of the big differences is that they have an atom weight division, which is 115-pound women, and that's a pretty small division right there. The UFC only goes down to 125 for the men and the women. So there's one big difference. Besides that, everything else is pretty much the same. A lot of the things that are different in one have to do with specific rules. They allow head kicks on a grounded opponent only if, you know, if both fighters are grounded. So there's a bit of a, it's kind of controversial to some people, but you can knee to the head and kick to the head if both fighters are on the ground. They allow 12 to 6 elbows and knees on the ground, which is something the UFC doesn't do. So there's a couple of things there that are different. Uh, you'll see a good example later of one of those rules coming into play and making a big difference when it comes to fights. It's brutal kicks and knees to the head on the ground. It's pretty brutal, and that's why the UFC doesn't have it, because to become mainstream from where they started, they couldn't have that kind of stuff involved. They were already fighting against all of the stigma that MMA had behind it already. So coming up to become mainstream, they couldn't allow that kind of stuff on the ground. It just seemed too brutal, even though, if if you think about it, your elbows in any fashion are brutal. And knees in any fashion are brutal. I mean, hell, when what happened this past weekend, a shin to the chin is brutal, and we saw what the outcome of that is. So you fold somebody in half, they fall to the ground, and they're knocked out with their eyes open. That's pretty brutal. But there's other things that make it worse, like knees and kicks to the head on the ground. That's something that they just don't do, and I don't know if they would ever adopt those kind of rules. It's not something that I think they're interested in right now. So we'll see what they have for the future on that, because I think at some point in time the UFC will need to make some changes to keep things interesting and change it up, because everybody needs something fresh every now and again, and they do that with stuff like you know uh, uniforms, their fight kits. They changed that up. They had a contract when that came up. They changed it up. Looks a little better now. They do it with the Ultimate Fighter, Dana White, Contender Series, stuff like that. But I think rule changes are something that a lot of people are interested in. It's one of the bigger topics. So maybe they'll adopt some rules now that One Championship's going to be streaming live on Amazon in the US during prime time. So that's one of the biggest things that they have going for them right now. That they are coming basically to the US. They want to have actual fights on US soil by next year. And that's one of the biggest things that Rich Franklin, who is the VP over at One Championship, it was talking about, is that early 2023 they want to have fights in the US instead of just streaming here, instead of just broadcasting the fights here. They want to have the fights here. So that'll be a big change when it comes to contending with the UFC and all the other organizations that are in the US as of now. So if you don't remember, that's Rich Franklin. He used to be a UFC fighter as well. He also used to be a math teacher, which is pretty crazy. He, had a pretty good career in the UFC. He fought a lot of notable names, including Vanderlei Silva, and that was a pretty crazy fight. I liked it. He fought a lot of other guys, and he had a pretty good career. And when he ended his career at the UFC, he wound up over at One Championship, and he's now the VP, and he goes around, talks to everybody about the organization and stuff with fighters and everything like that. So yeah, there he is in his iconic brown and pink shorts, which I'm sure if you're a fight fan, you remember he always wore something like that. But anyway, yeah, so he also broke down a lot of stuff when it comes to the differences with the UFC and One Championship. One of the bigger things besides the rules is weight cutting. They do weight cutting way differently there. They have something that they do with hydration, and there's a protocol that has to be passed, as well as the weight cutting. With this hydration, 2 days before they're tested for the fight. Um, I'm sorry, 2 days before the fight, they're tested for hydration uh, and their weight simultaneously. Pretty much, if they can't make the threshold that they're supposed to be under for hydration, then they can't even weigh in. And there's examples of this happening right now, which is pretty disappointing when it comes to the fights happening. But I'll get into that in a bit. Um, the day before the fight, if 2 days before the fight, if everything's good, then the day before the fight, they do the tests again, hydration and weight. They have to pass both. Some of their thresholds and stuff for the hydration it's a bit confusing. I know the way it was explained is beyond me as far as continuing to, or I'm sorry, being able to relay that information. I don't, not even gonna try. It's basically what they do is they test the gravity of the urine, um, and the amount of the particles in the urine, and the more particles there are, the more dehydrated the fighter is. So, that's pretty much the simplest breakdown you can give, I guess. I mean, that's simple enough for me, so I'm gonna keep it at that, because going deeper is it's yeah, you got to read. There's even the levels are, it's pretty crazy. um but I guess it's attainable because this is how they've done things for a while now. So um some of the biggest stuff about testing for hydration is because, like, in the UFC, the weight cutting is kind of crazy sometimes. People drop 20 to 30 pounds within a few days, and obviously that's not healthy. We all know that. So some of the reasons for testing for hydration is to keep the fighters healthy, obviously, and to help out with their performance, because right now one championship has a 70% finish rate, which is pretty good considering. um they they attribute that to the fact that they test for hydration. Because if the athletes are fully hydrated, uh, then they can both fight at an optimal level. If they're weight cutting like normal, they're dehydrated. Who knows? One could be dehydrated more than the other, and that kind of stuff affects the fight. Sometimes the guy just doesn't look like himself in there, and that's because he had a hard weight cut. He barely made weight, or he didn't make weight, and they still had the fight, and he just depleted himself massively during that weight cut, and it's just not good, man. Sometimes that makes for a horrible fight, or it makes for that guy getting horribly knocked out because he's so dehydrated. So, um, yeah, that's some of the bigger stuff with the hydration. They're just looking for better fights and better quality of fights, and in order to do that, hydration is a big part of their weight cutting, and that's looking like a way that a lot of people think the UFC should go as well, because of the crazy weight cutting that the fighters do in the UFC right now. So, and it affects weight classes as well. Like one championship, their bantamweight is basically, um well, we'll just say this. So like a 135er in the UFC is more like a 145er in one championship, because they don't cut, a 135er in the UFC is walking around probably at about 150 normally on average. And in one championship, the guys that are fighting at 135 are walking around at around 135, or at least pretty close to it, give or take a few pounds. And that's just how they keep their fighters intact and healthy, which seems to be pretty good. It looks like it's working out for them, at least. Um, so yeah, that's a small breakdown of kind of the difference of stuff that they have going on over there. These fights this weekend, um, it's they're debut on Amazon Prime Video. So if you have Amazon, you're gonna want to watch this, and check out a different side of fighting. You know, the UFC has its own way, its own production, and you know those fights. We know a lot of those fighters because you see them everywhere. But One Championship does have a lot of fighters from the UFC that have come over to One, and some of them have done well, some of them haven't. But it's still it's still MMA. But One also has Muay Thai fighting, submission grappling, and kickboxing. So they actually mix these fights together throughout the card. But on top of that, they've even done a super fight with actually mixed rules. So they've had a fight with Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson. Let me say that correctly. Mighty Mouse, if you know him from the UFC, he was the One champion at one point in time. He got traded to One Championship for Ben Askren, who was a champion as well in One Championship. Ben came over to the UFC. Demetrius went over to One Championship. And of course, he's looked at as one of the greatest fighters of all time. So because of his record, because of his long-standing title reign that he had, he just wasn't, he's a lower weight guy, and he just wasn't that popular, I guess, even though he did some pretty intense stuff while in the cage. Most notable, his last fight, one of his last fights in the UFC, not his last fight, but one of his last fights against Ray Borg. If you check that fight out, he did a flying armbar, which was pretty sick. And he's an exciting fighter, but a lot of people just didn't take to the lower weight classes. So this trade happened out of nowhere. Ben Askren came and left already, and from the UFC, and Demetrius Johnson is still fighting in One Championship, which this weekend he's fighting for the belt, to get the belt back. He's already been finished for the first time ever, by Adriano Moraes, who he's supposed to be fighting this weekend. But going back to the mixed rules fight, Demetrius Johnson fought in the first ever mixed rules fight at One Championship, and he did pretty well against a Muay Thai fighter. So the way that they did that fight was, it was 1 round Muay Thai, 1 round MMA, and then it would be a 3rd round Muay Thai, and then a 4th round MMA. Seems a little weird because it's an even amount of rounds. I think they had something set up for, if it turned out to be a draw at the end, there would be some way that they would break that tie. I just don't know what it was, because I'm going to be 100% honest here. I didn't follow everything that, nice loud thunder going on here. Background noise. But yeah, I didn't exactly follow that fight. I watched all the highlights and I watched the ending, but I didn't watch everything when it came to that fight. What I thought would happen happened, though. If Demetrius Johnson could make it through the round of Muay Thai, then he could definitely have a chance at winning that fight. And the first round, he fought Rotang, and at Muay Thai, which Rotang is a decorated Muay Thai guy. He's a champ. He's been a champ, and they fought Muay Thai for that first round, and Rotang was pretty successful. He pieced up Demetrius for a bit there, but DJ kept running around, getting away from him, using his footwork, and he was landing punches, and you could see he was a little bit wanting to take him down, but he couldn't, because the first round it was straight Muay Thai. So, but he made it past. At the end of the round, he did get hurt a little. Couple flush punches and a couple knees landed on him, and he barely got out of that first round. But then he came back. He recovers fast, because that's what Demetrius Johnson does. And he was able to come back out into the second round to do the MMA round. And he did what he does. He ran Rotang down, and you know, Rotang doesn't uh he's not well versed in MMA. You could see it right away. So, he did what he could to stay away. They exchanged some shots here and there, but eventually DJ got him down, and as you can see, he was able to get his back, and he was able to choke him out. So that's how he won that fight. But the interesting thing is, it went down to the last, like very last, 4, 3, 2, 1, right before the bell rang. The choke got in, and he actually put Rotang to sleep. So they stopped the fight probably with, I would say it was like a second and a half left, which was, made it pretty interesting. So that was that. And now Demetrius Johnson's here to try to take his belt back from Adriano Moraes. This is just DJ, with that win, doing his thing and showing that he can survive in a Muay Thai fight. Adriano Moraes is a champ right now. So this is right before I jumped on to get started with this cast. I was looking through and found out that, literally less than an hour ago, they announced that Adriano Moraes didn't make hydration for the first round of testing 2 days out from the fight. So he wasn't allowed to even weigh in. So tomorrow they're going to check him again and see if he's good. It was, from the numbers I read, he was barely off. It's probably equivalent to like being less than a pound away for weight. So hopefully he can get that together and they can keep this fight on, because I want to see DJ get his belt back. But Moraes he's a pretty good fighter as well. Obviously, he's a champ now. He beat DJ the first time. And man, that was a crazy fight too. He was able to, work DJ to the point where, he basically threw a right hook on DJ, dropped him, and when he got him to the ground, went down on the ground with him, and then knee to the head of DJ and knocked him out cold. It was crazy to see, because Demetrius Johnson doesn't get finished that way. He usually, it's a decision. That's how he lost his title in the UFC. So, Adriano Moraes is legit, and he's a savage, man. That knee was nasty. So if they can keep this fight together, it'll be interesting, and it'll be a good fight for the main event to be on Amazon for the first time. So hopefully it stays together for them, and we get to see DJ fight. Couple other things about Moraes. He's got the most wins in one championship, the most title defenses, and the most finishes and subs in one flyweight history. So, he's pretty decorated. He's got what it takes to, be an interesting fighter. He's finishing fights and getting submissions, and of course, that's what everybody's looking for. So, we'll see if that fight stays on. Hopefully, get some news tomorrow that he made hydration, made weight, and the fight's still on. Unfortunately, though, the other fight I wanted to highlight was the guy that Demetrius Johnson fought and beat, Rotang. He apparently fell sick with some kind of illness, and they've already scrapped that fight. So he was gonna fight Michael Savas, and that, I wanted to see him fight. It was gonna be good. He's got over 250 wins by the time he turned 21. So if you watch the fight with DJ, you can see his Muay Thai skills in that first round. He punches hard, he kicks hard. It's fast, lightning fast. and he's one of the bigger names when it comes to Muay Thai and in one championship. But that fight's off, so hopefully he gets well soon and he gets to come back and get that fight in. Um, so yeah, that's about it for one championship. I don't really know as much about one. I'll be straight honest. I don't know as much about one championship as I do about UFC and other organizations because it's it's one of those things that happens at different times, odd times because it's overseas. Most of their fights happen in Singapore, so they've been around for a while, and I follow the UFC fighters that go over there and see how they're doing, but I don't watch it as religiously as I watch UFC. So that's why I wanted to give a short breakdown and tell you guys a little bit about one championship. Because if a fight fan like me doesn't watch that much of it, I'm not sure how much everyone else knows about it. Have you heard about it? Do you know about it? Do you know who fights there? Do you know their rules? Do you know what they're about? Having people like Rich Franklin out there trying to promote for them and get fighters and get everything taken care of for the fighters is a good thing for that organization. It's a well-known person that used to be a UFC fighter. He's got a name, he's got the presence, he's got everything to, you know, help out that organization. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you the guy Rodtang was supposed to fight, Michael Savas. Again, hopefully that fight will come up soon and they will be able to get that going again. But in the end, we got one on Prime Video. It's gonna be the fight. Let's keep our fingers crossed that Moraes comes up with the hydration on point and his weight on point so that him and DJ can get this fight going again. And I will come back with a recap of that fight too. Hopefully it's as exciting as the first one. We'll have to wait and see. First, we got to get past the hydration and the weight cut. So good luck to those guys. Hopefully their fight winds up happening and we're able to get that going. And again, that fight is on Prime Video on Friday. Prime time here in the US too, so I'd assume somewhere around 7 p.m. If you have Amazon Prime, I would say check it out for sure. It's worth even watching just one fight. Maybe the undercard isn't going to be as exciting as people might want it to be because they don't know who these other fighters are. But like I said, it's different fights, Muay Thai, submission grappling, everything like that. You could take a look at the fight card and see that I believe there's Muay Thai and kickboxing for sure. And if this fight happens, it'll be worth it. It'll be worth watching that main event. So that's about it for one championship this time. The other fights I wanted to take a look at is BKFC, Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. These fights are happening on Saturday, and bare knuckle is bare knuckle is bare knuckle. You know what you're getting when it comes to bare knuckle. There's some fights happen this past weekend that were pretty decent, pretty big fights. Mike Perry and Michael Venom Page fought this past weekend, and that was a great fight. It was bloody, and it was fun. It was the outcome was not expected for me. I didn't expect Platinum Perry to take that win because Michael Venom Page has some crazy dynamic striking, and he's fast and he hits hard, but some of his weapons were taken away, being that it's bare knuckle boxing. It's not. There's no leg kicks. There's no high kicks. There's no kicks at all. So, and those are some of his strongest attributes is his kicks, and he couldn't use them. So it made for a great fight, and it was bloody, and there were some great exchanges, and Mike Perry came out with the win. And I'm pretty happy for him, actually. It kind of does a lot for him with his career right now to beat somebody like Michael Page. So check that fight out if you get a chance. Take a look at that. Go back and watch it. It's entertaining for sure. But this week we have Christine Ferreira versus Taylor Starling. Now, these girls have a history. They had a bit of a beef going because a while back there Ferreira was doing an interview like on the street outside of a venue or something, and Taylor Starling, of course, has someone with a phone behind her, so that it just pops up. She's walking with a purpose in a black little dress with some Converse on, which is hilarious. She walks over to where Ferreira is and interrupts the interview by grabbing the championship belt off of Ferreira's arm, and pretty much a scuffle ensues. We'll say you can look that up. It's a pretty funny video. They go after each other. Of course, they get broken up quickly because there's security around, and even the interviewer is in the mix of everything, trying to break things up. It's funny. It's a funny video, but that's where the beef is. They had words before, of course, and that's where it spans from, though, and it's funny. So this should be a good fight. Taylor Starling's always entertaining. Ferreira, I haven't watched or followed much of her fights. She's the champ right now, though. I'm not that big into BKFC, but there's a lot of notable fighters in that organization, and that's where a lot of people go. So it's worth checking out. Bare knuckle, it's bloody. People get cut up because there's no gloves. It's obviously bare knuckle. So lots of cuts, lots of blood. If you're into it, check it out. Not bad. Lot of good fights, and you see a lot of people you might actually recognize in that organization. So as for this fight, um, it's for the flyweight championship belt. So we'll see who comes out on top. Personally, I guess I'm going for Taylor Starling a little bit, but it's only because I do follow her on social media, and I've seen her for a little while now, coming up in her career. So that's probably who I'm going for. But yeah, it should be an entertaining fight. Let's see. Next fight would be a couple of ex-UFC fighters, actually. John Dodson versus Benoit. They both fought in the UFC. They're both making their BKFC debut, and they're both heavy hitters. So this fight might have some fireworks, and it might not last very long, but it just depends on how they adapt to not having gloves. Are they both? Dodson already said he's coming out there to break both his fists and somebody's face. So that's his view, and that's how he's looking at this fight. He said he's coming out to be entertaining. He's coming out to do what he always does, which is go after someone and come with the fury. So with that in mind, Benoit is the kind of guy to also throw heavy hands, and I don't know if he's as fired up though as Dodson. Dodson's a little firecracker. He's always jumping around. He's got high energy, and it never runs out. So this should be interesting, and I'm actually excited to watch this one. Two ex-UFC guys going at it, bare knuckle. I'll take it. So we'll check it out, see what happens, and hopefully it's as entertaining as I think it'll be. And then the last notable fight, once again, ex-UFC fighter Isaac Valley Flag. He was in the UFC for a bit. Kind of an iffy record in the UFC. So now he's over here in BKFC fighting Brad Kelly. There's not much on Kelly. I looked at some stuff. He looks like he's down to throw. He's down to throw down for sure. And so his fight was bloody. He was bloodied up, but he didn't give up. He kept going. He got his eye busted up in the last fight I watched him in, and he did pretty well at coming back and winning. So we'll give him that much. Belly Flag, I think, yeah, he did. He actually fought Melvin Gillard, which is another ex UFC fighter. Any old fan, any not old fan, I am an old fan. Any fan who's been a fan for a long time knows who Melvin Gillard is. He's crazy in the UFC, always doing just dynamic, crazy stuff in the cage, jumping around, throwing heavy punches, and you know, record not great after he got done. So he's back over in BKFC. I don't think he's got the hunger to fight. He actually quit on the stool when he fought Belly Flag. So it was a TKO for Belly Flag for that fight. And it was yeah, it's hard to see Melvin Gillard go out like that. Quit on the stool. He basically just said, I'm done. And that was it. That's how the fight ended. Uneventful, but sad to see. We'll see where Melvin Gillard goes from there. But yeah, we got ex UFC fighters on this card. And so that kind of interests me, watching guys from back in the day, especially people like John Dodson, man. He's one of my favorite fighters. I got to meet him at a fan expo one time, and really nice dude. Listen to him on many a podcast, and he's always entertaining just to listen to talk. Lots of energy. So should be fun. This whole card should be pretty good. These three fights especially is what I'm looking forward to, and I'm gonna check it out because I got to get my fill of fights. So that's it for Bare Knuckle. Check it out if you'd like. I believe it's on. You know what? I'm not exactly sure where it's at, but I think you got to pay $5 to watch. So not too bad. I think you get it straight from their website, and I think it's like $5 to watch it. It's basically their version of a pay-per-view. But the entertaining fights, even the highlights, whenever you see the highlights, it's great. It's fun to watch. Maybe not as much as UFC for me, but it keeps my interest, and you see a lot of ex UFC fighters over there. Watching them, fight bare knuckle is entertaining to me. They have people right now that are, they have Paige Van Zandt. She was supposed to be on the card last week, and something happened there. It got canceled, but her fight's coming up in October. They rescheduled it already, so we'll see what that was about. I'm sure information on that will come out soon. She wasn't very happy about the cancellation, but she made that known on Instagram and all other social media. She was pissed, and she said it wasn't her fault. That was her biggest thing. She made it clear it was not her fault. She did not pull out. Her opponent was trying to say or insinuate that she pulled out, but she didn't, at least from my understanding. So hopefully that fight will happen, and hopefully it will come to fruition soon. Anyway, next week we will have some UFC. It will be the first card in Paris, and it will feature Cyril Gane, who is from Paris himself, and Tai Tuivasa, who is a really fun fighter. Mr. Shui himself, Shui Vasa. That's going to be a good fight. Cyril Gane is very technical, and he's very athletic, and he moves well. But Tai Tuivasa, as we all know, or if you're a fight fan, can win no matter what's happening to him during the fight. So that's entertaining, and it's going to be, fun to see something happen in Paris because they've been trying to get there for a long time. As you can see, Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori are going to be the co-main. it's good to see Whitaker back, and I hope that he's back to being the Whitaker of old. Marvin Vittori is always a toss-up wild card kind of guy. You never know what he's going to come out and do. But yeah, that's next weekend, September 2nd, and we will go over that fight and take a look at what we got for the rest of that card. But for now, that's it. Of course, thanks for tuning in again. Hopefully, I gave you some information that will help you understand one championship, and maybe you'll check it out. Now that it's on Amazon, it's easy to find. I'm sure it's going to be on their title page when you bring up, your Fire Stick, or just jump onto Amazon Prime Video. They're going to be pushing it hard because, one championship's pushing it for sure. So check it out. And, if you learned anything here, I'm glad. If you didn't, I'm sorry. Try my best. BKFC, check that out as well. Bare knuckle fighting. If you're not into it, I understand. It's a bit different, but if you want to give it a shot, it's fun. So take a look. And yeah, as for next week, I will have previews of UFC, and yeah, we'll come back and have some more fun. Hopefully this has been good. I'm trying to get better at making sure I'm not saying a lot, but that's something that we all do, I think. I'm trying to make sure I flow better with my words and keeping everything together and not repeating myself. I like to point out the things that I do wrong because I hold myself accountable for it. And if I say it out loud, it makes it better for me. And when I watch this back, I also understand what I'm doing wrong. And I will do my best to make that better because I will get better at this. So thanks again for tuning in. Of course, got the Braves hat going today again. It matches my Big E as well. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, nothing else to highlight here. That's about it. We'll kick this off, and we'll end it for this week. And hopefully everyone has a good weekend. Check out the fights if you can, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again for all the support. I appreciate all of it. Keep it coming. Tell your friends. I'm going to get better. It's all going to get better, and it's going to be worth watching every week. So thanks again. Peace out.